Hello again. Welcome to the Union Pacific Railroad Geneva Subdivision in N-Scale. My name is Daryl Cruz, owner and builder of the layout, and your host for episode 17 of season 2020. This is another operations video. It's part 2 of a 2-part series on train ITAAH5. That's an intermodal train from Tacoma, Washington to Ashland Yard in Chicago, with a stop in Global 3, which you're looking at right now. Part 1 of the series was watching the train go from Clinton, Iowa, across the Mississippi River, through Franklin Grove, and then into Global 3. The lead engines have cut out, and there was some switching that was done with the cars, some dropping off of cars and adding some cars. Definitely recommend, if you haven't seen it yet, to see part 1 of this series. In part 2 now, we pick it up with a new set of locomotives coming out of the engine facilities and getting ready to couple onto the train and continue the run from Global 3 to Ashland Yard in Chicago. The locomotives that will be continuing the trip for this train are a SD70 Southern Pacific that's been repatched for Union Pacific. That's the lead locomotive there. We also have a TFM locomotive that's being used as a lease unit. And then of course we have a regular Union Pacific locomotive, Union Pacific number 3972. The Southern Pacific unit is the SD70M. The TFM is a SD70 Mac, and the 3972 Union Pacific is also a SD70M. All three of these locomotives are made by Cotto. Now the front and the lead and third locomotives are both SD70Ms, but if you look at them closely, the Southern Pacific unit has straight radiators, whereas the 3972 has the flared radiators. So even though they're both SD70Ms, there is that difference between the two. Most of the SD70Ms that Cotto has made have been of the flared radiator variety. The Southern Pacific with the straight is one of the rare Cottos made with the straight radiators. I'm not really sure why Cotto has not made more of the SD70Ms with the straight. And watching the Union Pacific Railroad, there's a lot of their Union Pacific locomotives, Southern Pacific or just the straight Union Pacific locomotives that have the straight radiators. But they haven't really made very many of them. I think they only made one batch, and none of that batch were in the Union Pacific yellow and gray. Anyway, the locomotives are backing onto the train as we see a coal train going through. That's a slow moving loaded coal train heading toward Chicago. So the three locomotives are coupling onto the train. While the train was stopped here, there have been some dropping off and picking up of cars done by the switching crew. Make sure you see part 1 if you would like to see that action actually taking place. Here you have a good look of the Global 3 Intermodal Yard. You have the engine facilities there in the foreground. There's a shed there that's a container and container chassis maintenance shed. And then you have the intermodal yard there in the background with the loading and unloading cranes, as well as classification tracks for the containers and the container cars. The coal train has passed through, and the ITAAH5 is now departing. As you can see, it's taken a crossover to go from the Global 3 lead track onto the main line, track 2 of the main line. If you look closely, you can tell there's actually a slight grade between the Global 3 yard and the main line. There's about a scale 18-inch difference between the two, which is prototypical for secondary track and mainline track. So there is about a 1.5% grade there going from the Global 3 yard onto the main line. Now, as I said, the coal train is past, but we're going to be seeing it again here pretty soon, since it's a lower priority, slower train, and this intermodal train is a higher priority and also a faster train. We'll be catching up to it as we go eastward, and I'll be passing it up somewhere along the line between here in Rochelle at Global 3 and Chicago. Those 3 yellow well cars are from Atlas. They are well cars that can take containers and also trailers. I have 6 of those and have them loaded with trailers to kind of give a little bit of variety. From the Global 3 Intermodal Yard, the train then goes into Rochelle proper. Now, the Union Pacific is a left-hand running railroad, and so generally the train would take this crossover at milepost 78 and move from track 2 to track 1. But as I said, there is a coal train in front of it that it will need to pass up. So for now, it's going to go ahead and stay on track 2 as it crosses First Avenue and heads towards the BNSF Union Pacific crossing. Looks like we have a green signal, which just turned red. The train continues to go through Rochelle. There you have the Rochelle Railroad Park and parking lot and display locomotives, as well as the neighborhood around the BNSF Union Pacific crossing. This is 9th Street that goes across both the BNSF and the UP main lines. This is the last area of Rochelle that I need to work on here, putting in some roads and other details. All right, we're now at the eastern outskirts of Rochelle, heading across the Rock River as we continue eastward on the Geneva Subdivision. Between Rochelle and Wheaton, Illinois here, our train, the ITAAH, has finally caught up to the coal train. And we'll pass it as it continues eastward. The intermodal train's going approximately 35 scale miles per hour, whereas the coal train is probably going at about 20 or less scale miles per hour. And the coal train is also slowing down, as it will eventually come to a stop to allow our train to cross over in front of it. But here we see it continuing through Wheaton, Illinois, on its way to Elmhurst, as it continues to make progress in passing up the coal train. As you can see, the coal train is slowing down even more, not quite coming to a stop, but is slowing down. And we're making good progress against it as we head into Elmhurst. And finally, at the Elmhurst Metro Station, we finally overtake the coal train, which is almost come to a complete stop. Now that our train is passed up the coal train, and the coal train has come almost to a complete stop, if not a complete stop, our train can now cross over onto the left-hand side at milepost 15. As you can see, we have a lower aspect yellow, which means we have permission to proceed into the crossover from track 2 to track 1. Which we do right by the engine facilities at milepost 15. Pretty extensive engine facilities here at the Proviso Yard. On the left hand side you see a car shops. There's a walkway to get from the offices over to the car shops, and the Proviso Yard Tower. And now we are passing the Proviso Yard classification tracks. Good thing we made it to the left-hand side as we meet a westbound crude oil tank train. As we come to the easternmost portion of the Proviso Yard. From the Proviso Yard, we go around a bend and head into Maywood, Illinois, which contains a metro station. Not been modeled yet. A lot to do yet here in Maywood. And then from Maywood, we'll go ahead and cross the Des Plaines River. As you can see, we have a yellow light. Ooh, who's that good looking guy in the mirror? We have a yellow light, which means we can proceed into the forest preserves on our way to River Forest, which we're entering now. And going past the metro station here at River Forest. This brings us to the close of Intermodal Train ITAAH. It originated in Tacoma, Washington, has a stop in Global 3 in Rochelle, and then finally will terminate at the Ashland Yard in Chicago, which is represented by the staging yards where the train is heading to right now. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you always enjoy the greatest hobby, model trains, especially in N scale. Have a great day. Take care.